Caddis Maximus here, this time with a review of the Harbor Freight Pittsburgh 3/8 drive 6-point offset flex flare crow's foot socket set. Let's go and say that one more time. The 6-point offset flare flex crow's foot socket set. One of the longest names for a socket you'll ever find. Now, something that you won't find is these sockets at Harbor Freight. These were one of the most limited time items I've ever seen at Harbor Freight. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at all of these here. These showed up on the shelves. I bought the Imperial, and then a couple months later the Metric showed up, and then I was telling friends about them, and a couple months after that they were just gone. None on the shelves and not on the website, which I thought was odd because these were really cool and really unique sockets. And I've looked these up. Professional tool companies make these, but they are an amazing amount of money, hundreds of dollars from Snap-on. These are Harbor Freight, and so they do some things that make them cheaper. One thing you'll notice is that all the small sizes use the same size drive base, except for the two largest metric ones, and then they just move up to a next stage, and then they're both the same size. It's the same deal with the Imperial. They're all the same size base, except for the three largest ones use a bigger base. Another thing that does make them a little cheaper is you can see here where the buckle on this socket is extremely thick compared to the buckle on this socket. It's because it's the same fork on all three sizes and they just broach it differently. So this one maybe is a little bit thin and then this one's extra thick. And that's something you might expect from Harbor Freight. Except for that these, what you wouldn't expect is to find just such unique sockets there. On the back side, and this was interesting, is they're blank on the Imperial, but when they came out with the metric ones, they actually laser etched the size of the metric on the back ones, which I really appreciate. So let's go and take a closer look at one of these here. Here we go. Here's the 12 millimeter. These really aren't bad. They flute the drive end. This one isn't the most aggressively fluted, but it is fluted. They do use a screw to attach the socket head, so if it ever gets loose it can be tightened down. I was going to say they're actually reasonably stiff to begin with, so that's pretty neat. And a fluted drive end with divots for locking, locking onto extensions and so forth. They seem to be pretty well made. They, instead of just real thin tines, they do make some tapered, pretty wide tines to support the kind of loads that you would put on a flare nut socket. They also have the nice protrusion feature, so they will get a little bit of extra grip, but they can sink down deeper into a tighter space. So what makes these unique compared to other crow's foot or flare nut sockets is the fact that they is fitting into tighter spaces. And I'll show you what I mean here. Here we go. The big difference is if you're reaching into a particularly tight space, say in this direction, come on, focus. There we go. If you're in this direction, then you can see how much smaller of a space. If we put, actually I'll put it on top this way. That back portion, this foot right here, can oftentimes cause you trouble because a lot of times, flare, like on an ABS pump or a variety of situations, there's several flare fittings next to each other and you just can't get this buckle sticking off, can't get into the space. So you need something that can go right in nice and tight, and that's where these come into real handy. The other nice thing about these is the fact that you can run them this way and they can become a standard offset flare nut wrench. It still is flexible, which is nice, and then what happens is the extension actually becomes the handle, so you can use a large 3/8 extension to get whatever leverage and force you need on those flare nuts. And because of that, they basically become my go-to sockets. I use these flare nuts so I can get good access because it's a more rigid setup and they are a stronger flare nut. But there's so many situations where it's just real convenient to reach in with this in any of a variety of positions and situations and be able to undo the flare nut. Also, the hinge point here is more reliable because it's only one pivot rather than trying to use a universal joint or something with a standard flare nut, or crow's foot, excuse me. And just in case anybody asks, come on, they are chrome vanadium. It does have CRV there. So overall, these sockets are definitely recommended, and I was able to find some sets on eBay for a real cheap price, so that's probably the only place you're going to be able to find these, unless you buy similar sockets from a different brand, which are going to be a bit more expensive than these were at Harbor Freight. Anyway, just wanted to show these off and to show people more varieties of kind of sockets and tools that are available. Thank you so much for subscribing for those who have. For those who haven't, please do subscribe. Catus Maximus out.